I'm from Florida, born and raised. I let the sunshine lead my way. I'm from Florida, heaven sakes. I pray to God for better days.
Today's show is sponsored by Farmer Joe's Fresh Market, located at 1401 Southwest Pine Island Road in beautiful Cape Coral, Florida. Come try some of the orange or yellow meated watermelons. They are juicy, sweet, and amazing. Some of the selections of the Braveheart meats are on sale this week. Everything you need in more, Lee County's greatest grocery store, Farmer Joe's Fresh Market. Businessman, attorney, political analyst, multimedia commentator, Mr. Ford O'Connell is with us to help us understand all the craziness. I am Smoking Joe, and we welcome you to Cracker Culture. Ford, the House has spoken, and our new speaker is Mr. Mike Johnson. I've got a short clip for those who may not be familiar with Mr. Johnson. I want to play right fast, and we'll discuss it.
Mike Johnson, a congressman from Louisiana, was a close Trump ally and played a key role in challenging the 2020 presidential election results. He led more than 100 House Republicans in supporting a lawsuit to overturn election results in 4 swing states that President Biden won. Johnson also claimed it was unconstitutional for states to have changed voting rules during the pandemic. Before politics, he had a career as a constitutional lawyer. Prior to being nominated for Speaker, he wasn't a particularly high-ranking Republican leader in Congress. But after McCarthy became the first Speaker to be removed by a vote on the House floor, Republicans held several secret ballot votes to select a new nominee. First, Rep. Steve Scalise was chosen, then dropped out. Then Jim Jordan was chosen, but Republicans dropped him as their nominee after he lost 3 rounds of voting. Then Tom Emmer was in the running, but he withdrew. And after yet another vote, Johnson was chosen as the nominee, and then elected as Speaker of the House.
So Ford, it wasn't as drawn out in the same manner as it took for McCarthy to get the majority, but it was definitely a bit suspenseful. I'm sure you watched it. I was trying to watch from the road. Jim Jordan couldn't get the majority of the vote, and then Congressman Byron Donalds threw his name in the ring, which kind of surprised me. Then I got a call, and I was told that there was a possibility of a Jordan-McCarthy unity speaker was raised. In the end result, Mike Johnson was elected House Speaker, but have they ever before tried to do this unity Speaker of the House before? Have you ever heard of that?
Not to my knowledge. And look, I agree with you. It took 22 days, but the People's House is open for business. And now you see the Democrats, they've got Mike Johnson derangement syndrome. And here's why. He's a committed conservative. He is not very flashy. He's very soft-spoken. He has the support of Donald Trump. The best way I can describe Mike Johnson is very simple. He's Jim Jordan in a blazer. And frankly, I think the Republicans got really lucky at the end of the day with Mike Johnson.
Yeah, I believe that he's probably our better choice. I mean, from Florida, if Byron would have got it, I would have had to support Byron. But, in the end, I think that the people spoke, and we're going to have to see what Mike can do. And hopefully we're going to get the House in order again.
Well, I hope you're right, but I'm going to tell you something. The Republican nightmare may be over, but the nightmare for Mike Johnson has just begun, because it's not just passing bills, trying to secure the border, trying to refund the government, reauthorize the FAA. He's now the chief fundraising leader for Republicans when you go into the 2024 elections when it comes to holding the House. So Mike Johnson's world has dramatically changed over the last week or so. And frankly, let's hope he's very successful, because it's not just about doing the people's business. He also is now third in line to the President of the United States and is the top constitutional officer in the U.S. Congress.
Well, I'm telling you, I got a lot of hope for this new House Speaker. Now, the so-called media and the Democrats are going crazy. And I got a pretty good assessment. What I believe is pretty accurate. I want to play for you here.
House Democrats are throwing a temper tantrum that would make a 2-year-old jealous. Democrats appear to be having an utter meltdown after Mike Johnson was unanimously elected by the Republican majority as the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Ilhan Omar labeled him a MAGA extremist. Adam Schiff discouraged people from doing their own research and tweeted, "Johnson is a hard-right, pro-Trump leading election denier in the House." And from AOC, introducing extremist GOP Speaker nominee Mike Johnson. I haven't seen Democrats this mad since someone suggested cutting taxes. Every single one of these Democrats voted to oust McCarthy from the speakership. And now they're upset that McCarthy isn't the speaker anymore? That's like deciding to go on a juice cleanse and then being mad when you have diarrhea. Get yourself some Depends and deal with it.
That was probably as accurate as anybody could have stated that right there. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, there's no question about it. If you had any questions about Mike Johnson, all you had to see was the freak out among AOC, the Democrats, Adam Schiff, the people that are actually trying to destroy America because they're actually afraid that the person who's in charge now, the People's House, might actually be a really good leader. I think what's also important here is there's something that was brought up in that clip. Mike Johnson is the first unanimous House Speaker on the Republican side since 2011 when John Boehner was. Believe it or not, Paul Ryan and Kevin McCarthy were not unanimous speakers. And for those from the Pelican state of Louisiana, he's the first ever House Speaker. I'll be honest, I've got a lot of high hopes for him, but let's also remember he only has a 4-seat majority, so he's going to have to make sure that he herds a lot of egos and they understand that basically they've got to do the people's business, and the Democrats are going to do everything possible to stop them from righting the ship in America.
Well, now, do you believe that he's got the support of the holdouts that were against McCarthy, like Gates and those folks? Do you think that Johnson can hold their support?
Yeah, let me say why Johnson won over Jordan. I mean, I was a big Jim Jordan fan. You know, the difference is Mike Johnson had the trust of everyone in the conference. There's more than, 220 people in the House Republican Conference. The real argument was between the conservatives and the appropriators. The media got that all wrong. The appropriators are the ones who dole out the money, who built up their time, the establishment Republicans who say, hey, we're going to spend the people's money. And frankly, Mike Johnson had the trust of everyone there. I don't know it's necessarily about those 8 holdouts. Those 8 holdouts just didn't like Kevin McCarthy because Kevin McCarthy made promises and didn't deliver. Mike Johnson hopefully has the trust of all of them, and they understand that there's a larger game at hand.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about Trump here. Mike Pence. Mike Pence dropped out of the running. Let me play this.
I came here to say it's become clear to me. This is not my time. So after much prayer and deliberation, I have decided to suspend my campaign for president effective today.
Former Vice President and Indiana Governor Mike Pence is dropping out of the 2024 presidential race, making that announcement yesterday during the Republican Jewish Conference in Las Vegas. His campaign struggled to raise money, and he barely qualified for the first 2 GOP primary debates. He did not make an endorsement. Pence's old boss, former President Donald Trump, has strong words after Pence's announcement yesterday. Trump says he expects an endorsement.
I don't know about Mike Pence. He should endorse me. He should endorse me. You know why? Because I had a great, successful presidency, and he was the vice president. He should endorse me.
Trump also agreed with a supporter in the crowd who called Mike Pence a, quote, traitor.
So I guess somebody yelled at Mike Pence was a traitor. So I was pretty interesting. But now Mike Pence has dropped out. And then also now we've got several others that didn't make it and is not going to the next round. And then Larry Elder also dropped out, but he endorsed Trump. And I want to show you what Larry said about that, Ford.
RNC would not allow me on that first debate. I met all their criteria, one of which was I had to have 40,000 individual donors. I did. The other is I had to have at least 3 polls where I was at 1% or better, and I did. I turned all that in. before the deadline, I get a phone call from Ronna McDaniel and Dave Bossy, the debate czar, and they tell me, I'm sorry, one of the polls you submitted, you can't use because it is, quote, affiliated with Trump. And it is true that the rules stipulate any poll affiliated with any candidate cannot be used by any other candidate. However, after this, Rasmussen puts out a statement and said, I'm sorry, we're not affiliated with Trump. There's no reason why Elder can't use us. We submitted a fourth one, and she said you submitted it too late, which is true. However, I didn't realize I needed to submit another one, A and B. That poll had been concluded before the deadline, so there was enough wiggle room that they could have put me up there had they wanted to. But I wasn't. We filed a complaint with the Federal Elections Commission. That's going to take years to adjudicate. In the meantime, if you're not on the first debate, how in the world can you get 3% to qualify for the second debate, let alone the 4% to qualify for the next debate coming up next week? So I'm being realistic. It doesn't look as if I'm going to be able to get the poll numbers and raise the kind of money it takes to run a credible campaign. I've always run as a mega guy. And when I was asked, if you're a mega guy, why is it you're running against Trump? To which I'd always say, as you know, I'm not running against Trump. I'm running against Biden-Harris. And there's some issues that nobody is talking about that we need to start talking about. And if I can get people talking about the epidemic of fatherlessness, the acute need for school choice in urban America, where, for example, there are 13 public high schools in Baltimore, all located in the inner city, where 0% of the kids can do math at grade level, and a much stronger denunciation of the Democrat narrative that America remains systemically racist because it's getting people killed. Cops are pulling back all over the country because they're intimidated, because they've been accused of being systemically racist. They're not engaging in proactive policing. In the last several years, there are thousands of people who are dead who otherwise would be alive, but for the police pulling back. So if I can get people talking about those issues, I've done my job. Fast forward, I'm invited to a private meeting with you-know-who at Mar-a-Lago, and this is a few days ago, Sarah, and I'm in his office, and I'm telling him I'm going to suspend my campaign, and I'm going to endorse him. He says, when are you going to make the announcement? I said, I don't know, in the next few days. He was having a fundraiser within a few hours. He said, how about now? Why don't we go downstairs and you make the announcement at the fundraiser? So I did. And that was a reaction. And so I'm very happy with what I did. I'm proud to have run credibly for president. Not very many people can do that. And we've gotten a lot of issues that people are talking about now that they weren't talking about before.
Now, Ford, I actually like Larry. I think I've discussed this with you before. I like Larry Elder, and I think it was very, very manly of him to step up and endorse Trump the way he did.
Look, I think that Larry Elder is a committed conservative who, a lot of people may know from Fox News in the past, but really on the West Coast, he really, carries the baton there. And when he's talking about fatherlessness and he's talking about the Democratic narrative of systemic racism, he's absolutely right. It would have been nice if he'd made the first debate so that he could make those points known and, brought into the wider conversation. But I will say this. Good for Larry Elder because Donald Trump is the presidential nominee in waiting. It's really that simple. And it's good that Larry Elder, a strong conservative like Larry Elder, is making that point known.
Well, the new Iowa poll has Trump leading by 27 points. And I got a clip here. I'll play of that so we can discuss it as well.
Well, Laura, Donald Trump has a 27 percentage point lead in Iowa right now. You can see the results of the new Des Moines Register Mediacom NBC News Iowa poll released today. It shows DeSantis and Haley are trailing behind, both at 16%.
The latest Des Moines Register NBC News Mediacom Iowa poll shows Nikki Haley's climbed 10 percentage points since August, now tied with Ron DeSantis. Over the same stretch, DeSantis' support has gone down by 3%.
This has become, I guess the best way to say it is, a battle for second place.
Besides Haley's rise, KCCI political analyst Dennis Goldford says this caucus cycle hasn't seen much change. The former president has maintained a commanding lead for months.
He's in a very enviable position at this point. That being said, we still have 2.5 months until the caucuses. It's hard to see how Trump could flame out at this point, but you never say never in politics.
Never say never, but I just don't see nobody getting close to Trump unless they pull something shady. There's no way that Donald Trump's not going to be our next president.
Look, Donald Trump, let's talk about Iowa for a second, because I think Iowa is very important. Look, Donald Trump is in pole position in Iowa, and he's only getting stronger. And this Des Moines Register poll, this is a big thing in Iowa. That's really the gold standard. I think what you have to look at is when you look at second place, things have gone from bad to worse for Ron DeSantis, and now you've got Nikki Haley sort of nipping at his heels. When Donald Trump wins Iowa, that's when you know the Republican primary is officially over, because once Donald Trump wins Iowa, he's going to win New Hampshire, he's going to win South Carolina, he's going to win Nevada, and he's going to win Florida. And when he does that for sure, then you won't listen to any more media sniping. Right now, it is more likely that Donald Trump is going to be the Republican presidential nominee, according to the bookies in Las Vegas, than it is that Joe Biden is going to be the Democrats' presidential nominee. Think about that for a second. And let me tell you something. Every time Donald Trump rises in the polls, it's like they indict him for something new, or they make up some new story, or they lie about the 14th Amendment. Every time you see a spat of negative news in between this Israel-Hamas battle, and it comes out of the blue, it's because Donald Trump is doing something right and winning.
Well, and I've always supported Ron DeSantis as our governor, but he is losing favor with his constituents in Florida, where I just seen some local RECs even ask him to please come home, drop out of the presidential race, and come home and do the job we've elected you for.
Look, as someone who's run for office, it's very hard, as you know, to tell candidates when to run and when not to run. I understand the pressure that they're under. That said, I think the reason why a lot of these candidates are sticking in the race is that they think that something might happen to Donald Trump from a legal standing that could allow them a possible window to become the nominee in Milwaukee, next summer. That's the reason why they're hanging around, because I will tell you right now, this race is frozen, and this race is frozen such that Donald Trump is the nominee.
Well, and I don't want to really get into much about the local stuff, but there's a lot of local podcasters that realistically have put everything in on DeSantis winning this race. And when this goes south, very south, Florida south, and Trump's in Mar-a-Lago, tell everybody welcome my presidential party, and that what's going to happen to some of these podcasters that was so anti-Trump?
They might want to learn the code, because unfortunately, this is Donald Trump has unfinished business, and they needed to understand what America first means. That is no disrespect, by the way, to Ron DeSantis, who is the greatest governor in Florida history. I will say, when it comes to his constituents, he needs to do a little bit better job when it comes to property insurance, because as that goes, Florida goes. And right now, this is the heyday of Florida. And I do think that Ron DeSantis does have some unfinished business at home as well. But, again, trying to be respectful of Ron, I understand that, but we do need him to take care of some things back home.
I agree, and I just think a lot of things made him look weak, especially with the right to run issue and things that most conservatives felt like was just kind of like underhanded, dirty pool playing. So I hope that he'll rise above it and come back and do his job.
Yeah, and I think, again, if he does his job, keeps Florida is the best state in the country, who knows what 2028 can bring. I do believe that the book has not been written on Ron DeSantis' political career, and I think he has a very bright political career ahead of him. It's just that this is Donald Trump's time, and Donald Trump has some unfinished business for America, and Donald Trump is the cure to what the evils that Joe Biden has caused in terms of everything from the border to China to the tinderbox around the world. Donald Trump has the experience to make it right. How do we know? Because we had no wars when Donald Trump was president. We had a much more secure border, the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. And I don't know about you, Joe, but stuff at Publix wasn't twice what it is now, and I had a lot more money in my 401k.
Like I said, I just come back off a trip across country and back, and I was just amazed that the difference in prices in different places. In some places, like we don't, we got different taxes here in Florida than other states. And I'm looking at receipts and I'm like, well, what's this? But I'll never leave Florida. If I can help it, I ain't never leaving Florida again.
I think that that's the right way to go. I agree with you. I'm right there with you. Heck, if it were up to me, I don't want to go north of Orlando, but I'm there too.
Well, Ford, me and you discussed the possibility of terrorist activities, even the possibility of a combination of various extremists joining forces. I want to share this from the FBI Director of Homeland Security hearing just moments ago and see if we wasn't pretty close to right.
That what we face and what we're doing to tackle them are always important, but it seems especially well-timed this year with the dangerous implications the very fluid situation in the Middle East has for our homeland security. The reality is that the terrorism threat has been elevated throughout 2023, but the ongoing war in the Middle East has raised the threat of an attack against Americans in the United States to a whole nother level. Since the horrific terrorist attacks committed by Hamas against innocent people in Israel a few weeks ago, we've been working around the clock to support our partners there and to protect Americans here at home. We assess that the actions of Hamas and its allies will serve as an inspiration, the likes of which we haven't seen since ISIS launched its so-called caliphate several years ago. In just the past few weeks, multiple foreign terrorist organizations have called for attacks against Americans and the West. Al-Qaeda issued its most specific call to attack the United States in the last 5 years. ISIS urged its followers to target Jewish communities in the United States and Europe. Hezbollah has publicly expressed its support for Hamas and threatened to attack U.S. interests in the Middle East. And we've seen an increase in attacks on U.S. military bases overseas carried out by militia groups backed by Iran. Here in the United States, our most immediate concern is that violent extremists, individuals or small groups, will draw inspiration from the events in the Middle East to carry out attacks against Americans going about their daily lives. That includes not just homegrown violent extremists inspired by a foreign terrorist organization, but also domestic violent extremists targeting Jewish or Muslim communities. We've already seen that with the individual we arrested last week in Houston who'd been studying how to build bombs and posted online about his support for killing Jews. And with the tragic killing of a 6-year-old Muslim boy in Illinois in what we're investigating as a federal hate crime. But as I said a few moments ago, on top of the homegrown violent extremists and domestic violent extremist threat, we also cannot and do not discount the possibility that Hamas or another foreign terrorist organization may exploit the current conflict to conduct attacks here on our own soil.
And Ford, me and you discussed this, the possibility of this happened a couple weeks ago, and it looks like we were right.
Well, look, there's another poll out there from News Nation that says 77% of Americans are concerned about a terrorist attack on U.S. soil. And let me say something that the FBI director didn't include in that little statement. Don't want to scare people at home. I hope I'm wrong. But he also failed to mention what's going on at the border. Okay. Border security is national security, despite what the Biden administration says. And remember, the Biden administration has let 1.5 million gotaways into this country. We don't know who they are. And when you hear about ISIS and you hear Hamas and Hezbollah, they all sound the same. They're all terrible, terrible terrorist organizations that Biden's appeased over the years. But there's one of those groups that's really bad, and that's Hezbollah, which is operating in Latin America as well. So, again, the Biden administration, their foreign policies caused this little issue in Israel and in the Middle East. But you got to remember, their border policy could bring what's going on in the Middle East to right here at home. And that should scare every American. And, you know, the other thing is that when a lot of these terrorist organizations, a lot of people hear it, they say, oh, well, they're just after the Israelis or they're just after the Jews. No, let me tell you something. When they're done, you know, screaming and yelling about Israel, they also then burn American flags and say, you're next. Yep. And I think we need to be very clear-eyed that America is the greatest country on earth, but at the same time, we've been very lax over the last 20 years, and I hope I'm wrong, Joe, but we are getting right around that sort of time in 9/11 where people say this can't happen here, And I hope it doesn't. But I don't have faith that the Biden administration is keeping its eye on the ball.
Well, I agree with you. And one of the problems that I've noticed, and I think I've discussed with you, is the liberal colleges has lost their damn minds. I mean, the people are out here, they don't even realize, some of them are probably have people in their family that are suffering because of these, and they don't even realize what they're standing up for. And I want to play a clip. I'll play it and let you decide what you think.
Professor Dershowitz, I want to start with, we're getting calls from Jewish students and some Christian Zionist students as well, that the harassment they're having on campus is unprecedented.
Obviously, things have gotten much, much, much worse. What Harvard did recently was just outrageous. It set up a commission to protect the anti-Semites. As an emeritus professor at Harvard, still associated with the university, I have demanded that the university publish the names of the students in these groups that have blamed these rapes on Israel. And as the result of me and others calling for the naming of these students, Harvard instead has said, no, we're going to provide services to help the students protect their anonymity. This isn't doxing. We're not talking about disclosing people's sexual orientation or where they live. These are people who defended the rape, the murder, and the beheading of people publicly. And we want to know their names so that employers can know. So I'm in a big fight with Harvard about that. I'm on the side of the First Amendment, not on the side of coddling these adults.
Look, Alan Dershowitz said it. We need to quit coddling these adults. We need to start teaching our kids to be actual caring human beings and understand what's really, because half of the kids don't even know what, they couldn't tell you what's in the Constitution. They don't even know.
Well, that's once again shame on our schools and shame on the media. Look, anti-Semitism is a global problem, but it's also a problem here at home in the United States, and it's a really big problem among the age of people, Americans under the age of 35. Do you realize that a majority, I told you this last time in Gallup, a majority of Democrats support Palestine over Israel? And when I look at some of the polls on those between 18 and 24 and maybe just under 35, what I see is they believe that what Hamas, a terrorist organization, does to Israel, killing 1,200 Jews on October 7th, can somehow be justified. Here's what's happened. I've talked about this often and people don't connect the dots. Diversity, equity, and inclusion over the last 2 decades has brainwashed America's youth into believing 2 things. 1, Israel is an oppressor, and 2, America is a systemically racist nation. Unfortunately, our younger generation is learning anti-American values and learning to spew anti-Semitism for something that they have no idea. Remember, you and I knew about World War II, Vietnam, you name it. Heck, you know, what happened in Beirut in the 80s in the barracks. These people don't even know the history of 9/11.
Right.
This is what's going on, and they seem to believe this. But I'm going to tell you something. Anti-Semitism right now, that is what is being manifested across the globe. And I'm going to tell you, it's right here at home. And it's just much worse among the Democrat Party than it is among the Republicans.
Well, and I've seen problems here locally. I know there was a rabbi where some kids painted some stuff on the outside of their synagogue and stuff. And I just, you know, if one of my kids done something like that, they wouldn't be able to sit down for about 2 months. I wouldn't tolerate that. I don't know when are parents going to start being parents again and get these children back in line, and they need to put God, country first.
Well, they also need to realize that, you know, even in Southwest Florida, they're being brainwashed a lot of what they're taught. I mean, I hate to say that out loud, but they are. I mean, we say, oh, that stuff only goes on in New York City and Los Angeles. I'm not going to lie to you. It goes on in Florida, too. It's just not as bad. And you got to realize, like, under diversity, equity, and inclusion, everyone is broken into 2 groups. You're either a victim or you're an oppressor. And they are told that Hamas, the terrorist group, is a victim and Israel's an oppressor. But, I mean, when I look at the anti-Semitism around the world, and even here at home, it's not just because of this battle between Israel and Hamas. This is coming up and just highlighting how bad it is around the world and this country. And we should be ashamed that this goes on.
I'm ashamed, and you know, I'm one of these people where I like to talk to people. I'll talk to anybody, but I can't tolerate ignorance. And when somebody starts telling me about what I don't know about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'm a damn American Indian. I don't want to hear that. I know what you're talking about. You have no idea how much more I know about it than you will ever know. And it bothers me. Like you, I mean, you mentioned me. You're a college professor. You know what goes on in these colleges.
Yeah, and I sometimes have to keep my mouth shut when one of the schools I've taught at is, how should I say, making national news for saying some very unsavory things on campus.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to put you on the spot on that. Well, we're getting toward that time. It's
the man's trash.
Time to talk about the man's trash. We had a lot to talk about, and I couldn't get it all down to clips, but we are going to talk about the main event that's happening in Lee County right now. Now, Ford, me and you, we had John Albion on the show over a year ago. And if you remember, John Albion told us on that show that the establishment would make the county manager position an elected position. Has been planned since last year. I want to show you a clip. Cecil Pendergrass is trying to do something to stop it. He's not got a lot of fans. Let me show you this.
The record, please.
David Camberry. I have the privilege of serving as the president of the Lee County Fire Chiefs Association. And we fully support the current makeup of the board being able to hire this county manager. So we are in support of you moving forward with that type of legislation request.
Okay, thank you very much for your comment. Motion by Commissioner Pendergrass and a second by Commissioner Sandelli. We've had public comment. Any further discussion before anything? So here's my thought on the issue then. I'd like to weigh in a little bit. I think we're actually searching for a problem here that doesn't need to be solved right now. I don't understand why we would put this on the radar of the delegation if it's not something that they're already looking at. You know, the other question that I would ask is, what would be the actual, what would be the actual consequence or reaction to passing this resolution? I don't know that by passing this resolution, the delegation would just say, oh, they didn't like it, so we're not going to do it. I mean, typically resolutions and letters haven't swayed or been persuasive to delegations in the past. I think it's important right now to look at the thoughts that Commissioner Ruane shared, in that we need to go into this session unified, working together with our delegation to do everything we can to bring home hurricane relief funds for our community and not get distracted by issues that aren't even currently on the agenda. And so that's where I'm at on this. In fact, one of the things, since he did send an email to us, he's unable to join us at the meeting today, I'll go ahead and read into the record Commissioner Ruane's letter and thought on this, and that is, Dear Commissioners, this is not an issue on the agenda for the upcoming delegation meeting. As you know, we cannot bring up items that were not submitted by the deadline of Monday, October 16th. This is essentially a moot point. Regardless of my personal position on this issue, of which I do not support, sending a letter to the delegation or sending the chair to convey a message of what we should or shouldn't do is not in our best interest. We should consider the important appropriation asks we are requesting regarding hurricane recovery, water quality, infrastructure, and revenue deferral. I do not know the position of the other commissioners, but unless we have unanimous consent, which we do not with my opposition, I do not think we should engage when the board has a divided opinion. We should at the very least convey the message that the board is not unified in this message.
We are the voice, and we should know that we're the voice, and we should continue to be the voice.
Mr. Pendergrass?
I'd like to go back to my opening statement that we're here today because I had a meeting with someone from the delegation about this issue. So it wasn't not on the radar. It was definitely on the radar. There's obviously a plan in place, and some people in this room know what the plan was going to be about bringing this forward at a later date or either next year, because there's obviously an objective here to get come out, and it's hopefully everybody would come out of the shadows and say what the real meaning for the purpose of this is. And I wasn't going to read Commissioner Wayne's email, which is a public record, out loud, because I don't think our form of government would be an issue for the delegation, because we have a charter form of government and we have representatives. We just went to the Charter Commission. Of those 15 people that we select, each one of us select 3 people that represent us from the community, and we made that choice again after 8 years ago. We just did it again now, going through the process now, that we like the current form of government. We do not want to change that form of government. Now, I know one person wants to see that changed, but I'm not going to set policy based upon one person's personal objectives. So.
Hats off to Cecil. They've been planning this for over a year, and you know, I don't know what caused Cecil to finally bring it up. Maybe he's tired of playing the BS game or what, but hats off to Cecil Pendergrass. And I'm telling you, this has been planned since at least last year. Like I said, Albion told me and you this before. The goal is for Andrew's son to take Brian Hammond's seat on the county commission. And Brian Hammond will either become this new county manager, especially if it's an elected position, or the mayor of Lee County, which would be the mayor of all mayors. As long as it's an elected position, you can guess who's behind it all. The Millerites.
You know, I really have to give Cecil Pendergrass a hat tip here. I mean, he's actually, I don't know what his motivation is, but he's exposing Terry Miller's plan right in front of you. And I mean, the only reason why they want an elected position is basically so they can keep having a revolving door of the same clowns that are basically stealing from the county to be reelected. This is unbelievable. And he literally came out and said it. And what's so crazy is everyone else tried to pretend like they have no idea what he's talking about. And the other 3 you can see, I mean, you can see Mike Greenwell next to Cecil sitting there going, well, we're just going to move on from this. And you're thinking, what's he got in this deal too?
Well, you know, and if you watched who was in attendance, nervous as could be, sitting right there in attendance on the camera was Mr. Mike Caldwell. And he was very concerned with Cecil Pendergrass bringing up that resolution. I wonder why he's worried about it.
Hey, your guess is as good as mine, but you know, when you're part of the cabal, who knows what it is you're angling for.
I just got a message while we were sitting here, and I'm not a big fan of. I think you know, most of Lee County, all of Lee County, is pretty much controlled by the establishment. I'm not a fan of Tommy Doyle's, and I've made that clear. Do you find it weird that there is a huge mailer going out from the supervisor of elections in Lee County pushing for vote by mail?
It seems to be a curious timing. Let me put it that way. Very curious timing on that. Again, I don't know, you know, if there's any intention on Doyle's part or not, but that just seems a little strange to me. But if, you know, they did that in the past at roughly the same time, then maybe I'm wrong on that. But I'll just say, why would you be pushing that now? Because when we look at vote by mail, okay, among Republican states, I believe that we are one of the highest per capita, and certainly in South Florida.
Yeah, it just seems odd timing. And like I said, everybody's jumping on board doing all these early endorsements. I think we're seeing endorsements way earlier than normal. What we usually see at November after Thanksgiving? Is that usually when about?
Sometimes you don't see them depending on the position. You don't see them until January, February, because, you know, then you have the primary and everything else all the way into August. I don't know why people are endorsing right now, because you really don't even know who the field is. That's the crazy part. And these endorsements are trying to stop the field from getting larger and actually giving the residents of both Lee and Collier better choices, because we know the Republican's going to win the general election. But let's get the best Republicans we can in both counties running and actually give the people a choice versus blocking off the people's choice for other people's personal agendas.
Well, I'm not going to tell you who I said this to, but I am going to tell you that I asked a question about somebody that endorsed somebody. And I said, look, I said, if you had to have brain surgery, but there was a podiatrist available that could do it, are you going to let the podiatrist do it, or are you going to let the brain surgeon do it? What's your choice? And he couldn't answer it. And I can tell you, I believe he endorsed the podiatrist.
Well, unfortunately, that's the problem, in both counties is there's a little bit of cronyism, and what winds up happening is they wind up endorsing the people that aren't capable of doing the job. And then people go, but they're a Republican. Why is that the case? Hey, let the horses run. Give the people a choice. Let them know what's going on. I mean, you look at most of the elected officials in Lee County, without naming names, I promise you, they didn't pick the brain surgeon. They picked the podiatrist.
Absolutely. Well, and I didn't put no clips. I'm going to do a different show on this, but I did want to bring up, me and you had discussed Morgan Wright, who is the phys ed teacher in Lee County, who has put his hat in the ring to run for superintendent. I have spoke with Morgan privately, and I really like him. And it was awful funny that I just seen his opponent, Denise Carlin, who claims to be a conservative. And I've said this all along. If you are managed by Terry Miller Strategies, if you're or Dane Eagle, Ballard and Associates, or the new Strayhorn, Persons, Mullica, Fisher cabal, we're not going to support you. And I'm saying that because they've watched our show, Ford, because they put the New York Mouthpiece had Denise Carlin on as a private thing to try to counteract all she is against what I said she is. I have never been proven wrong on anything I've said. Now, Denise Carlin has had somebody reach out to our team wanting to talk to some of our team. Well, Miss Carlin, as long as the TM strategy is supporting you, we haven't got nothing to say to you, but we're going to do everything we can to make sure you do not get elected. And I'm going to put out a nice show. I don't like promoting that New York numbskull that thinks he's the voice for Florida. But I've got a few other things I want to post out there that maybe even Mr. Persons forgot when he sat up at Seed the Table and said that how the school board was run like a communism the Lee County, and that they didn't listen to the parents and didn't let the people speak. And if he was elected, he would make sure that Alfie Oakes got his contract and every penny was owed to him. That never seemed to happen.
Are you telling me that people make promises in Lee County before they're elected, and then they get elected and they never uphold any of them? And look, I think you make a great point when it comes to Mr. Leslie, as you refer to him as a New York mouthpiece. Whenever he is promoting a local candidate, it's a very simple thing. He's Terry Miller's compensated mouthpiece.
Absolutely.
That's very, very important for people to know. I don't know what Leslie's doing with the DeSantis folks, but I can tell you when it comes to Southwest Florida, if he's touting somebody and he's touting them hard, guess who's compensating him for that? He's not a journalist in that case. He's a paid mouthpiece.
Well, I don't think he's ever been a journalist, and I'm never claimed to be a journalist. I'm a nobody. I'm just somebody got tired of eating crap sandwiches from them every day. And I'm speaking out, and I'm going to do everything I can to expose them. I appreciate, Ford, your knowledge is we need more politicians in our area like you that actually have knowledge and case law knowledge and know the right things that they can say, do. And, man, look, it's this quid pro quo they got going on around here. It's just too much.
I know, and it's really sad, Joe, because, you've been a Floridian, much longer than I have. But what kills me is, particularly in Southwest Florida and South Florida, this is our heyday. And we are legitimately being run by a bunch of cronies who don't have the best interest of the constituents in mind, and a bunch of cronies who, when they're done with their job or their public service, They're using each other to continue in public service and get paid. I mean, people need to really pay attention. I mean, we've got a whole bunch of people that are starting to be like Joe Biden, where they're making money with holding public service offices for their entire life. This is getting out of control. And who's losing? The residents of Lee County, and in some cases, the residents of Collier and Charlotte County as well.
Well, I've said it all along, folks. In Lee County, your vote does not matter unless you're voting for one of the establishment candidates. Ford's living proof. And again, I just want to ask questions. I got questions. Ford, you ran against Tiffany Esposito. What has she done for Southwest Florida?
Nothing that I know of, but other than what the Chamber of Commerce tells her to do. And I'm going to tell you one better. The Chamber of Commerce hated Donald Trump. I wonder why they threw so much money against me.
Well, and you know, and I'm not going to go too far into this, because I reached out and offered to speak with Michael Giallombardo, who penned the letter, which I think he didn't have the cojones to go through with it. It was, I think it was a game. I think it was a setup by Terry. And the reason I feel this way is I got to looking at what has Mike Giallombardo done for Southwest Florida since he's been elected.
You'll know better than I will.
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. He got ran out of the meeting for calling DeSantis, and the county manager ran him right out of the meeting for making that phone call over a bridge. I know he done that, but other than that, I don't know of anything that he's actually done. I just don't understand why we are putting these people in. We're paying them ungodly amounts of money, and they're not performing. They're not doing anything for us.
Particularly at the county commissioner level, my friend, particularly at the county commissioner level. And I'm always concerned about the school board, as you know, because that's the next generation.
Yeah. Well, Ford, I know this you got some traveling to do. You got a place to be tomorrow, and I got some things to do. I'll end the show. I want to tell everybody, I hope that you stay tuned. We've got some big stories about to break. I'm going to be breaking some shows. And when me and Ford come back next time, we both won't be hopefully not traveling down the road so much, and we'll be able to throw some clips in here, let you see some of this other stuff that we're seeing locally. Ford, I hope that you and Sarah have safe travels, and I'll be looking forward to listening to you tomorrow.
Well, I appreciate it, my man.
Thank you as always, my friend. It's always good talking to you. Folks, we love you, Florida. Love, peace, and gator grease. This is Smoking Joe with Ford O'Connell for the Cracker Culture Podcast, the podcast for real Floridians. We'll see you again soon.